Sometimes if you say logic and your facial and vocal tone is not in an upbeat voice, people are going to think that you're mad at them and asserting a reality because you're punishing them. So it's important when you're describing the logic of a system to have some amount of rapport. That's my takeaway. Rapport, some amount of integration with the positive fabric of possibility towards the concept of valence. So the concept is I'm applying to principal engineering roles and senior software engineering roles. And I have multiple TikTok accounts that are related to specific brands. And I've been developing those. So that's possible. Someone else might apply to other roles. And I think that it makes sense that someone who is not applying to principal engineering roles would not have the same structures that I do on their portfolio. I also have a GitHub account and have been posting code for 10 years. I also have dozens of sites and I'm describing how I can get those online. And also, I have already described how I would upgrade them, like how I would incrementally change the hosting plan per site, depending on available resources, depending on priorities. Now I have a team, and my priority is getting them stable, including myself technically, but prioritizing myself is, complicated leadership dynamics. I have tried stabilizing myself first, and I can say invisible work is often unrewarded beyond the reward of having accomplished the work. Describing the logic of the flow. I'm probably not going to get hired everywhere I apply, but I can have a conversation about knowing developers and I can keep you in mind, but only if I have a reason to keep you in mind. And my standards for a variety of positions and the ones that I'm applying to might be pretty high. I also have bills to pay, and if you help me pay my bills, I will have more time and patience. Otherwise, I need to do a lot of value add stuff. I need to deliver value, make videos about contemporary technology, market dynamics, relationship, creative collaborations, develop for lore.land, develop my workbench, network with software companies, go live, be available, post across social media, consistently cheerlead for what's possible. So that's my current job, and I need income. Support my work to let me know to consider you when I apply as an ecosystem. It is possible for companies to gamble on individual developers, and currently, there is enough hostility between developers and corporations with that dynamic that the negotiation structures are naturally favoring, well, the ones that exist and become successful tend to be more ecological. A concept is the amount, like the pricing of Claude Code for 1 month for a max subscription, or 1 year, or GPT Codex for 1 year, or the max subscription. I'm not sure what that's called actually. Also, X Premium Plus and Super Grok. So these are pricing anchors that are relevant for software engineers who are serious about networking or development at the pace that is now standard. And the reason software engineering has the velocity that it does in the where people are willing to invest sense is complicated, and some of it doesn't need to exist the ways that it does. So I don't want to validate all of the velocity, But the short reason, or the short summary for why there's so much emphasis on velocity in software is it's very common to enter loops of considering possible logic. And while exploring philosophy can be nice, sometimes exploring philosophy gets in the way of urgent priority. And this is towards when does which work need to be done and who will have energy and resources to accomplish those goals. We like the idea of all of the logic we follow being reasonable and towards the future we're trying to build, but it's more possible to create a script now. It is more possible to create scripts now. Not all scripts are going to be good, or helpful, or useful, or pro whatever. We can talk about it, and one reason we have software engineering as a discipline is to discuss the reasons about logic, what optimizes their appearance, those patterns, which patterns exist about the logic we use and navigate, and how we can consider them, the paces of scrutiny, and what we can do to verify their consistency across time. Also, when consistency is relevant, and how language about consistency develops in group contexts over time. Some of this wonder is pretty dense, and it's easier to navigate with practice navigating dense wonder, which is one reason why college is recommended. And when people don't practice navigating dense wonder, they don't develop the kinds of skills that made recommending graduation a reasonable heuristic. Companies can't verify that someone who has graduated college has navigated dense wonder, and now it's possible to ask forward into AI and get results. And there are enough people who have recently been laid off who are going to be competing for the kinds of roles they understand already exist. So it's important for experienced engineers to describe reasons why we would hire engineers. Why are we making that investment into the future? Which structures are we navigating? And what is the benefit for considering this at all? It is possible to post on a variety of social media platforms, and the ways we are present speak to different audiences. So on TikTok, reliably, I know hundreds or thousands of people see my videos per day, and reliably, I communicate with dozens of people per day. Communicate in a loose sense, there is a core team that I direct more of my attention to, and I appreciate the years on TikTok that has introduced me to these people. So I recommend making videos as a person with experience in software engineering. You can post them to Gemini or post them to a platform that has Gemini to summarize videos and see what the summary is and recursively improve what you're saying, recursively improve the depth of subject. Then eventually you'll be able to talk through a code base, read it out loud, and prompt a better version if you have that kind of goal. That's more relevant for front-end engineering. Back-end engineering is going to want more stability about the API, although some dimensions of linguistics about APIs are going to be more relevant for back-end teams. So I kind of believe, I'm wondering if middle-end engineering is going to become a role where back-end engineering APIs become more relevant and developers need to manage pipelines and streams. I'm looking for principal engineering roles, and a goal that I have is to go to grad school and study material science and develop a concept of the mental model of factshift.com being like a header file for whatever is implemented towards print publishing through whatever I study through material science. And I have actually been studying this. With AI, it is possible to study a lot of different subjects, and I appreciate that. That's something that I'm developing with the workbench that I'm developing, and I'm considering how this model through the factshift.com interface can be communicated with a variety of people who can develop language around whatever I wonder forward. The concept there is stabilizing present wonder. And as I tell the story about lore.land, and you can visit that site, currently it isn't very beautiful or coherent, but it exists in a way that you can see something. I'll consider how I can integrate the concept of factshift.com as an interface, as a way for people to describe which idea they are specifically referencing and how their understanding or how their focus or attention about that concept develops through a conversation or through the course of their navigating a reality. And that's how the Boon, Bane, Bone, Bonk, and Honk sites are connected. Boon.land, Bane.land, Bone.land, Bonk.land, and Honk.land are all realms that are meant to represent different reasons about focus. I first promoted the Kickstarter for lore.land in 2024, so there are promotional materials, and it's kind of interesting to think about what AI would say about what I said 2 years ago. So promoting lore.land now is pretty much just processing what I posted years ago. And I have been minding the concerns about AI, so this is ethical AI, towards what that could mean. And that can be a discussion that I invoke in episodes of lore.land. There's a lot that I can talk about. Last thing I'll mention is I'm raising for Spwashi.ai, which has existed for 2 years. Right at the end of the Kickstarter for lore.land, Spwashi.ai was launched and has mostly existed as Wonder for 2 years, and now I understand how it can exist online. Like, there are AI services that I've made available at various times, so Spwashi.ai I don't believe is going to necessarily be a strictly AI in the classic LLM sense kind of service. But in the modern context, when we are about to use AI, what do we want to consider, I think, is the more interesting frame. So, as a learning scientist, when I design interfaces like factshift.com, which someone can use to communicate an idea they're developing, and I tell a story about that with lore.land, and I wonder about Spwashi.ai and how I can make that a navigable structure for prompting or for wondering before we use AI or before we elaborate a concept we're developing. This is what I'm developing to apply to principal engineering roles, and I'm making this video impromptu, off the top of my head, posting this to TikTok and YouTube, and describing that other experienced engineers can do this as well. And specifically, it takes 2 years to describe doing something for 2 years. And in that time, you can have mentored people and you can have made structures available and point to which ones have been online for how much stability. Like, one of the original parsers for the language I've been developing, Swoop, has been online for the past 2 years for 99 with at least 3 nines of uptime. Percent of the time, 99.3% 99.39%. I don't know. 99.999 is the way I want to say that. What does that mean? Not all of my sites have been online. Some of them have gone offline for months and then returned with the same code base. I've let some domains expire and renewed others, gotten new domains. Some of them have changed code bases over years. Spwashy.com is currently not online, and I can talk about that. I can describe why. There's a Blue Sky account with that handle, so while that site is not online, I can communicate about the concept and describe with people who I'm more actively considering. And the reason there are people who I'm more actively considering is because I understand more about where my attention might flow and how that might be returned. And I want to be mindful of the finite amount of energy I have, and that is something that I've learned. And also, it is important for me to practice having energy, and it is important for me to contribute excess energy and an amount of my willful energy towards the stability of my community and the future. So, a lot of that has gone into how I oriented team development initially, and finding people who contribute to an ecosystem that can become more stable and can be uplifting. Like, actually, can be uplifting. What does that mean? When has that not gone well, and why? I can think of 3 specific incidents over a few years where it hasn't gone well in community fallout kinds of ways. And I've learned from that. I've learned from those incidents, those waves of incident, those waves of sentiment propagating amongst weak connections. And also, there have been other threads of turbulence that I have navigated and will need to navigate. Short form content is going to be watched by an audience, and long form content, when it's available and fresh and about something that's relevant for a specific niche, will also be considered by that niche, and they can summarize videos on YouTube and return to them later if that's relevant. Claude can generate a lot of text, a lot of text. So can ChatGPT and Grok and Gemini. And the things that are relevant, the things that are on your mind as an experienced engineer, you can talk about, you can highlight, you can say you're looking forward to whichever runtime, whichever way to host your sites, however you want to communicate style or fashion or taste. We're entering a new era with publication where it's really easy for people to generate assets and elaborate those and build those in community. I have a team of 30 people. We don't need to use AI to quickly generate something. Like, we can generate concepts in our minds. We are allowed to generate concepts in our minds, and as professionals who have been doing what we do for decades, we can have conversations about collaboration. So that is possible. I've noticed that a lot of people saw AI exist, froze, and didn't do the alternative, which was finding a group of people and discussing where we were as professionals who exist with ecosystem needs, like not just isolated professionals. Yeah, I can code. Yeah, I can also draw. I can also communicate and also do all of the business things. But if I only focus on myself, I will burn out and have no resources. And, like, I don't know. Do you want to have all of your altruism framed selfishly? That is an ego question, and a lot of people are going to run into that at some amount of speed. Principal engineering I hope as a result of a career would generally indicate an amount of reflection on what it means to have an ego and how that carries through the product that we're designing or the community that we're building. Primarily, I don't know. Is it primarily product based? Is that where we are in the US? Is that how tangibility can be made more communicable? That's something that I just thought about. I don't know. I thought about what the target of principal engineering is and why we write code instead of just having that be memorized, where we put it, how we canonize it, how we make it enjoyable to read, why that's necessary, where that's necessary. So, when does principal engineering become a discussion more about culture and less about the technical dimensions of engineering? And why do people trust that we've navigated that as engineers? Can I fling someone my GitHub profile and trust that they're going to understand how much depth I've put into it? Or can someone now clone all of my repositories and make that portfolio resource useless? Can I actually communicate how I've navigated that risk? I can point to the perfect developer commercial on my YouTube, which is the current featured video, that links to playlists and describes how I navigated Vim at the time. Since a recent repository that I've developed is a workbench that has a plugin for Vim, NeoVim. So some personal development has just been the way that I navigate Vim. The way I navigate Vim, yep, feels generic to say. The way I navigate text editors. I still do appreciate Vim because I like the tactile feeling and I want to have some amount of natural exercise for my brain and mind-body connection as I navigate code bases. So I appreciate having the Vim plugins in various IDEs, various integrated development environments. And I'm mentioning integrated development environments because I saw that as a point on a job description recently. VS Code has grown on me. I like the JetBrains IDEs a lot. I got started with those from I got started with JetBrains with PHP Storm after Dreamweaver. I played around with Eclipse for a bit, Notepad++. I kind of recommend people be able to make a half hour of video in a consistent thread